Good evening. BBC London comes to you from the Battle of Britain bunker in Uxbridge. It's from here that the command was sent to begin the D-Day landings 80 years ago. Over 150,000 troops responded by storming the beaches of Normandy, every move being followed in a top-secret bunker 60 feet below where I'm standing now. And messages from here were sent to Prime Minister Winston Churchill. On the programme tonight, a gun salute on board HMS Belfast, the warship that played such a pivotal role on this day in 1944.
She's one of London's most famous landmarks, and I'll be finding out just how important HMS Belfast was in the D-Day landings.
From the bunker where the message was sent to start D-Day, I'll speak to the daughter of the woman who sent that message.
I am more than proud. I mean, for us, for me and for my brother and the whole family, she's our hero.
And we'll hear from surviving veterans reflecting on their role in helping to liberate Western Europe from the Nazis.
It's the most amazing sight, all these boats heading for Normandy, you know. What could we expect? The worst, I suppose.
Very good evening. Welcome to former RAF Uxbridge, which is now the Battle of Britain bunker. It's from here that the command was sent to Allied forces to begin the D-Day invasion. That was back on the 6th of June 1944, when thousands of British, American, Canadian and troops from other countries stormed the beaches of Normandy to take control back from the Nazis. Within 11 months of D-Day, the Germans had surrendered, Adolf Hitler had committed suicide, and those who were still alive in the vicious concentration camps were freed. That all happened after D-Day, and the person whose job it was to send that initial message to begin the invasion of the Allied forces worked 60 feet below ground level here in a top-secret bunker. She worked with the communications unit. It was her job to make sure the message was accurate, it went to the right place, and it went on time. Today, her daughter came here from America to stand in the very place her mother stood in 80 years ago. And she spoke for the first time on television to me about her mother, Renee. Denise, how must it feel like to be standing here looking at the map that your mother would have looked at?
I really cannot believe I'm here to think that my mother was here and planning and thinking and doing things for the war, no?
You must feel so proud.
I am more than proud. I mean, for us, for me and for my brother and the whole family, she's our hero.
Is this something she would talk to you about?
Actually, not so much. She really was very, very modest. She gave us this talk about her role. These very high-ranking officials come in and they say, you need to send this coded message and not make any mistakes. So, of course, when she told us the story, she said, I got very nervous, but apparently the message got through with no issues. And then the next day was June 6th, D-Day, and she realized that what she had actually done was send the instructions of the launching of D-Day.
That's extraordinary, but what's also extraordinary is that you didn't learn about it until you were at university.
Later.
She didn't mention that she was responsible for this incredibly important message.
Yeah, now I wonder why she did not. Well, why wasn't I more curious to ask her, but she just did not. Maybe she thought that we were too far removed from that reality. I don't know.
And you've made the journey over from America to be here 80 years on from when your mother sent that message.
It's quite amazing.
Why was it important for you to be here today?
I mean, I think it's the best way to honor what she did, because it's really remarkable and unique. You know, she came from a Jewish Orthodox family. It wasn't something normal to do. She was so happy and so proud working in a secret base like this one. So, I mean, how could I not be here, you know?
My sincere thanks to Denise for speaking to me earlier. Well, let's now speak to Dr. Sarah Louise Miller from King's College, who specialises in defence studies. Men were on the landings in Normandy, but women played an important role back here to make sure things all went according to plan.
An extremely important role, actually, because you don't pull off a gargantuan operation like D-Day without a significant amount of planning behind the scenes, and that is what's happening in places that are secreted away like this. So massive amount of intelligence on what the enemy is capable of, what it intends to do. Every little piece of information will help those boys on the beaches.
And one of the extraordinary things I've learnt in recent days is the amount of planning, which was genius, really, that went into D-Day that some people forget about. But that was a long process.
Yeah, it was about 18 months. Some details were being worked out even before that, because obviously this push into occupied territory is what's wanted all along. But about 18 months before the landings, they really start to put the plans together. And all of that information is collected over time, and it's double checked, and they keep checking it. What's changing? What do those beaches look like? What does the enemy have on them that might make it tricky for us? It's so important that that carries on over all that time.
And things like the decoys they used, like inflatable tanks.
Yeah,
tell us about that.
It's the stuff of a James Bond movie, isn't it? But you've got these inflatable tanks, things that make it look like we've got more than what we have, and that it's somewhere other than they think it's going to be. So we're trying to convince the Germans that this is going to happen in a different location than Normandy, in the Calais region, and we use things like inflatable tanks, dummies dropped from aircraft to look like paratroopers, and they're actually made of Hessian sacks that are weighted down, all sorts.
All sorts of things. And Dr. Miller, it is important also to understand that D-Day wasn't the end of the war. This was the beginning of a campaign which lasted months, and many times was very bloody, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It is very much the start of something. So it's really tempting to look at D-Day and think, this is it. It goes on for months after that, and people will continue to lose their lives with that gruesome push back into occupied territory. It takes a long time. It's a lot of land to cover.
And it's important for us to remember that. Dr. Miller, thank you so much for your time this evening. Now, wherever you look in London, there are reminders, if you look hard, of D-Day. But one of the places you don't actually have to look that hard is the HMS Belfast, moored, of course, near Tower Bridge. It played a crucial role on that day 80 years ago. Wendy Hurrell has been there for us today. Let's hear from her now. Wendy.
Yes, thank you, Asad. A real focal point for commemorations today on board HMS Belfast, because she was there. She was one of the first into battle with the guns roaring, and they once again sounded out across London today in a gun salute. Now, we went behind the scenes to see how they prepare for that, and we'll also be hearing from curators who are charged with caring for this historic vessel to hear more about her role in the D-Day landings and how she connects us to the events of that day 80 years ago. Yes, that's right, Alice, and it never fails to amaze me how atmospheric it is aboard this ship. This is not just a very famous landmark in the heart of London. It's somewhere we can come and visit and feel a little bit of what went on 80 years ago today. And at 1 o'clock today, those mighty guns that were resounding around D-Day landings once again sounded out across London. Well, a gun salute on a prominent day, on a significant day, of course takes quite a lot of preparation, and Nikki Ford, my colleague, has been behind the scenes to see how they made that happen and find out a little bit more about the role of HMS Belfast on this day 80 years ago.
HMS Belfast, one of London's best-known landmarks, now permanently docked on the River Thames. 80 years ago, it took its place off the Normandy coast, ready for its part in the D-Day landings.
It was Belfast that signalled it was time to begin the bombardment. It opened fire at 5:27 and after it did, all the ships around it then continued to open fire as well.
It was given one specific target: to attack and neutralise the enemy's guns that were trained on the beaches. The crew on board would have had to have held their nerve.
You'd have been down in a ship, you can't see where you are, you're 4 decks down, you're under the waterline, and you can feel the force of these guns every time they fire. And if you do the broadside, the whole ship shakes.
Their target, a gun battery at La Marie-Fontaine, was successfully captured by British troops several hours later. HMS Belfast went on to spend 5 weeks off the shore of Normandy, helping with operations. The secret to its success are its guns. 12 in total are on board.
This is one of the 12 6-inch guns.
Up in the gun turret, ahead of the D-Day commemorations, Andy has been getting them ready.
These are the guns that were on the ship for most of its life. We'll be loading the guns up, firing them electronically and simulating the gun firings as it was used in Normandy.
In action, the guns would have used shells like this, passed up through a hoist along with the explosive cordite. That would have sent the shell flying for 14.5 miles. Nowadays, they use pyrotechnics.
What we're going to do is open up the breech, place the pyrotechnics inside it, and then connect up the wiring, very carefully close the breech on it, and connect up to a control box.
Terry has designed the pyrotechnics to look like flames coming out of the barrel. The only thing left to do is check those barrels are clear.
The only thing that could go wrong is any forms of obstruction that's allowed into the barrel at the moment, you know, between now and us firing. But this will be constantly checked, as I'll do now, you know, just to make sure there isn't a pigeon got into there or something like this.
For Londoners watching on, it's hoped they'll understand a little more of HMS Belfast's role in the conflict.
Belfast itself is a D-Day veteran. We see the plucky old guys who've gone across the Channel, aged 100 and so forth, but Belfast is one of them. Belfast was there in the same way that they were there.
Nikki Ford, BBC London.
Well, with me now is James Taylor, Principal Curator of Imperial War Museums. Yes. Thank you so much. I knew I'd forget that bit. This is such a prominent part of history, sitting here on the River Thames, isn't it? And it is a really tangible way that links us to what happened 80 years ago.
It is. I mean, HMS Belfast took part in the bombardment force on the 6th of June 1944. And so it is a participant in the invasion and a witness to it as well. So, and it is in fact the largest object in Imperial War Museum's collection. We have 33 million items in those collections. And I think what's, you know, when one looks, obviously we know that we're not going to have veterans of D-Day forever, but one thing that we do know is that we will have not only HMS Belfast, but the letters, the diaries, the memoirs, film, photographs, even artworks in our collection that will hold their voices in perpetuity.
Yeah, you're right to say that, because, you know, we're looking at this 80-year anniversary.
Yes.
Fortunately, we are still looking at it in living memory, but we won't have them forever. And as the years go on, this is somewhere people can come to feel how they might have felt. It's very atmospheric, this vessel.
It's incredibly atmospheric, and you know, one can walk around, you can see how, I mean, this wasn't just a fighting machine, it was a floating city as well. You've got a 950 strong crew who have to live together, work together, enjoy themselves together, and so there's so many human stories embodied in this ship.
Yes, and this is what you do as a curator, and you are custodian of so many important artefacts, and this is really how best we remember those people, remember them as the sacrifice they made.
It is, and it's always those human voices that really count. This is, you know, this is a large piece of metal essentially, but what we want to know about is how people felt and thought when they were on board this ship during the most momentous events in world history.
Yeah, it will continue to connect us through the years, won't it?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much,
My
James.
pleasure.
Well, as you heard there, this momentous ship, it really is very atmospheric, right in the heart of London, HMS Belfast, and it will continue to connect us to the past as we go through many more years to come. Assad.
Yeah, Wendy, it really is an incredible ship, well worth visiting if there is any Londoner who hasn't visited it already. You know, I read an interesting thing about HMS Belfast while I was researching about D-Day and learning new things about it all the time. Prime Minister of the day, Sir Winston Churchill, he wanted to go and watch the D-Day landings for himself, standing on HMS Belfast, which we know played such a crucial role. Everyone tried to talk him out of it, saying it's too dangerous, you shouldn't go. He wasn't having any of it. He was determined to go, determined to stand on the decks of HMS Belfast. The King, King George VI, found out what the Prime Minister wanted to do and said, OK, fine, if you want to go and watch the D-Day landings, I'm coming as well. I'm going to stand there next to you on HMS Belfast. Winston Churchill couldn't allow the King to go. That's the only reason why he stepped down. Extraordinary times, extraordinary people. None more extraordinary than the people who served in the armed forces and stormed the beaches of Normandy.